All right, let's talk about fermentation, fermentation vessels. Okay. There are literally a ton of different options in terms of what are you going to put your beer in to pitch your yeast, contain it, and let the yeast do its magic, so to speak. The first and one of the more popular fermentation vessels is a glass carboy. I am not a fan of glass carboys for a multitude of reasons. The very first beer that I ever made, and again, this is my fault. Your mileage may vary, but first beer I ever made, went through it all, took hours, got it into this big honking glass carboy. It was heavy. I was really having a hard time carrying it. It was slipping out of my hands. So I laid it back on top of my stove, and my stove burner, I have one of those convection top stoves. So like the burner was like off, but it was like still hot. So as soon as I put the glass carboy on top of the stove, within a matter of probably 10 or 15 seconds, the carboy itself shattered because, thermal, whatever. I don't remember what the term is, but basically the glass went from being room temperature to being hot. That thermal shock shattered the glass, shot all the wort all over my kitchen, glass shards all over my floor. I've got 2 little daughters running around. It was not good. Okay. Fortunately, I didn't hurt myself. I didn't hurt anybody else, but I have seen videos online of people carrying these big glass carboys that are 50, 60 pounds when they're full of 5 gallons of beer. The neck breaking, them cutting their arms, cutting their legs. Like, I've seen some really bad things. I do not recommend glass carboys. They're dangerous. They're heavy. They're really hard to clean. There really isn't any benefit to using them at all. They don't have a spigot. They don't have any way to pump beer out of them. You've got to use a racking cane, which is a pain. I just simply do not recommend glass carboys whatsoever. I do not endorse glass carboys, and I would never buy one, and I would never recommend one to anybody else. So, having said that, plastic is your friend. It's lighter. It's a lot more tolerant to temperature change. Not extreme, because you don't want to melt the thing, or you don't want to freeze the thing. But I mean, it handles, it has a much longer lifespan. It's much less dangerous. It takes up less space. It's not as bulky. You can buy handles for these things, and they're more convenient. So the first and most common one that you'll find is this one here. This is a bucket. This is a brew bucket. It came with my Midwest Supplies kit that I purchased back in the day. It has a they're very light. They've got handles on them. So they're easy to carry. They'll usually have like a spigot on it so that you can attach a hose and pump the beer out of the bucket when it's done fermenting into kegs or into bottles if you attach a bottle wand to it, which I'll cover in another video, obviously. But these do the job. They're not the most, they're probably the most often used just because they come with most kits and they're cheap. I mean, you could even buy like a $5 Lowe's 5-gallon bucket and like buy a lid and like drill a hole in the lid and use that if you wanted to. But buckets work perfectly fine. I know lots of guys who still use buckets. I've kind of graduated up in this world because I'm all about efficiency, and you'll see why here in just a minute. But buckets, they work just fine. There's nothing wrong with them at all. They'll come with one lid that has a hole in it, so that you can put your airlock on. Easy peasy. Okay. The next option, which is my personal favorite, is a Fermonster, like this. They are large. This one is 7 gallons, I do believe. So they're 7 gallons. You can see they're a lot more slender than a bucket. They do have a spout, a spigot on them. This makes racking into a keg, bottles, a heck of a lot easier. All you need is some beverage tube that fits the end of the spout, and you can just let gravity do the work when you're filling bottles or kegs. That's my recommended vessel. There are a lot of other kinds out there. There are stainless steel fermenters out there if you want to spend a bunch of money, which I don't recommend, at least not early on. There are conicals, which are basically, they look like they kind of come straight down, but then at the bottom they come to a point. People will use those so that they can reuse yeast that they've pitched into it. I don't reuse my yeast. I always buy new yeast. I know I shouldn't. I should probably get with the program, but I don't know. Farming yeast is just, it's a lot of work. So I just don't do it. So figure out what's best for you. Again, I recommend staying away from glass. Absolutely zero benefit to using glass. It's dangerous. It's heavy. I mean, it's not fun. Stick to plastic. Plastic's your friend. Again, I recommend the Fermonster. I'll put it in the equipment page or in the links page. I'll put it somewhere because it's what I recommend. So any of those vessels will work. So that's a little bit about fermenters, and we'll be back for the next one.